I was on my way to see my son clutching a homemade sandwich and hoping he'd remember the man I used to be. On the bus, an elderly man in worn-out clothes stepped on. Nobody moved from the priority seats. Then the bus lurched. He stumbled forward. I caught him before he hit the floor. I never thought that one act of kindness would save me. But when we both got off at the same stop and walked into my son's law firm together, when my son saw him, and his face went white. As death, I realized. That shabby old man I'd helped. He wasn't. Just anyone. And the next 10 minutes would change my life forever. Tell me where you're from, then answer this. Do you believe one moment of kindness can save your entire life? Drop your city plus. Believe if you do. What I'm about to tell you will prove you right. My name is Jack Coleman. This is what happened. I checked my watch at Upham's Corner Station 2:25. My meeting with my son Douglas wasn't until 5, but I wanted to arrive early. Maybe we could talk. Maybe he'd even eat the meatloaf sandwich I'd made his favorite when he was little. The Route 15 bus arrived at 2:30 sharp. I climbed aboard, paid my fare, and scanned the packed interior. Every seat was taken. I moved toward the back, clutching my paper bag, and found a place to stand. Near the priority seats, a young guy in his early 20s sat sprawled across the blue-marked bench, reserved for elderly passengers. Expensive sneakers, white earbuds, completely relaxed. I grabbed the overhead rail and steadied myself. 3 stops later, an old man got on. He had to be 80 at least. His coat was threadbare, his shoes split at the seams, and he wore no gloves, despite the cold. He climbed the steps, slowly, breathing hard, gripping the handrail. The bus was full. He looked around for a seat and found none. He approached the young man and spoke politely. "Excuse me, son. Would you mind?" The kid didn't look up, just nodded along to his music. "Excuse me?" The old man tried again. Nothing. I spoke up. "Hey, that's priority seating." The kid pulled out one earbud, annoyed. "What would you give up your seat for him?" He glanced at the old man and shrugged. "I'm good," he said, sliding the earbud back in. The bus lurched through a yellow light. The sudden movement sent the old man stumbling. He reached for the rail and missed. I dropped my bag and caught him by the elbow before he hit the floor. "I've got you, sir." He clutched my arm, gasping. "Thank you." I steadied him, then turned to the young man who still hadn't moved. "That's enough," I said. "Get up." He rolled his eyes. "I'm not—" He almost fell, I snapped. He could have cracked his skull. I raised my phone. "If you don't stand up right now, I'm recording this and posting it. Let everyone see who refuses a priority seat to an 80-year-old man." His face changed. He glanced at my phone, then at the other passengers. Several were already watching, some with phones raised. Whatever, he muttered, standing quickly. He grabbed his bag and shoved past me toward the back of the bus. I turned to the old man and gestured to the seat. "Please." He sat down slowly, releasing a grateful sigh. "Thank you. Truly." I picked up my paper bag, relieved the sandwich was still intact, and took the spot where the kid had been standing. The old man looked up at me. Really looked. In his pale blue eyes I saw genuine respect. "Not many people would do that," he said. "Stand up for a stranger?" I shrugged. "My dad taught me to speak up when something's wrong." He smiled, but there was something else in it, something thoughtful. He kept studying my face like this moment mattered. The bus rolled toward downtown. I swayed with emotion, thinking about Douglas, about our meeting, about how I'd worked my whole life to give him everything. Now I was 62, standing on a bus with a sandwich and hope. I didn't notice how often the old man glanced at me, or the strange glint in his eyes, like he'd made a decision that would change everything. It felt like one small choice, yet somehow heavier, as if the future had quietly shifted direction forever. The bus rattled through afternoon traffic. I stood gripping the rail, holding my paper bag. The old man sat in the priority seat, catching his breath. After a moment, he looked up. "What's in the bag, if you don't mind me asking?" I glanced down. "Meatloaf sandwich. My son's favorite since he was a boy." His eyes softened. "He's a lucky man to have a father like you." Lucky. If only he knew. "I used to make it every Sunday. He'd eat the whole thing in 3 bites. I paused. "That was a long time ago." "But you still remember," the old man said quietly. "That means something." The bus stop passengers shuffled on and off. I spoke again. "I'm meeting him this afternoon, 5 o'clock, at his office downtown. He must be doing well. He's a lawyer, works at Commonwealth Law Firm." Something flickered in the old man's eyes, but his expression didn't change. Commonwealth. That's quite prestigious. Yeah, he worked hard to get there. I shifted my weight. I'm proud of him. I just wish... I stopped. Why was I telling a stranger this? But the old man's kindness pulled the words out. He wants me to sign some papers today. Property papers. The house I've lived in for 25 years, it's in his name. Now he wants me to sign it over officially. Take a small payment and move on. And will you... I looked out the window. I don't know. He's a lawyer. He knows all the angles. And I'm just his father. That doesn't seem to count for much anymore. The old man was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was firm. A father's love is priceless. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. But before I could respond, the driver called out. Downtown crossing. I checked my watch. 3:10. The old man rose from his seat. I reached out automatically. Let me help. Thank you, son. We moved toward the door. Where are you heading? I asked. He smiled mysteriously. Where are you going? Commonwealth Law Firm, One Financial Center. His smile widened slightly. What a coincidence. I'm heading that way too. Something about his tone gave me pause, but I couldn't place it. We can walk together then? I'd like that. The doors hissed open. We stepped onto the sidewalk of Downtown Crossing, the heart of Boston's financial district. People rushed past in every direction. Suits, briefcases, everyone important. I felt out of place, but the old man seemed perfectly at ease, like he'd walked these streets 1,000 times. This way, I said, gesturing toward the tall buildings ahead. We started walking together, two strangers heading to the same place for very different reasons. I didn't notice how the old man glanced at me as we walked. Didn't catch his slight smile when I'd mentioned Commonwealth Law Firm. Didn't see the knowing look in his eyes like someone who just realized he was 3 moves ahead in a game I didn't even know we were playing. As we walked together down the crowded sidewalk toward the gleaming towers of downtown Boston, my mind drifted back 25 years back to the day that changed everything. The old man beside me was saying something about the weather, but I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about Douglas, about the house, about how we got here. Year 2000. I was 37. Douglas was 9. We lived in one room in Dorchester, 200 square feet. Hot plate bathroom down the hall. Douglas slept on a pull-out couch. I slept on the floor. Every morning at 5, I'd wake up, make his breakfast, walk him to school, then head to whatever carpentry job I could find. The money was never enough. Then I saw it. Number 47 Dorchester Avenue. A small house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. But it had 2 bedrooms and a yard where Douglas could play. $180,000. I didn't have it, but I had hope. I sold my pickup truck, got $8,000. Borrowed from coworkers. Took on a second job, then a third. 18-hour days, 7 days a week, for 6 months straight. Finally, I had the down payment, $36,000. The bank said no. My income was too low. I tried 3 more banks. Same answer. I was ready to give up when the real estate agent said, "Put it in your son's name. Easier for inheritance. You make the payments, he gets the deed. It's what families do." It made sense. Douglas was my blood, my boy. Of course I trusted him. So I signed. $647 a month for 25 years. I never missed a payment. Not once. I worked my 3 jobs, fixed the roof, painted the walls. Douglas grew up in that house, did his homework at the kitchen table, learned to ride a bike in the driveway, graduated high school on the front porch. When he got into college, I worked harder, paid his tuition, his books, his rent. He graduated with honors, law school, became a lawyer. I was so proud. But somewhere along the way, he changed. Calls got shorter, visits stopped. Last Christmas, he didn't come home. This morning I got a text. Meet me at 5. Sign the papers and go. The house is worth $420,000 now. Douglas wants me to sign it over. He's offering $15,000. Less than half of what I put down 25 years ago. $15,000 for 25 years of my life. I stared at that message for an hour. Then I made his favorite sandwich and decided to show up early. Maybe if he saw me, he'd remember who we used to be. Maybe he'd change his mind. Mr. Coleman, the old man's voice pulled me back. I blinked. We'd stopped walking. One financial center stood before us, a tower of glass and steel, rising 28 stories into the gray January sky. Commonwealth Law Firm, top floor, where Douglas worked, where he was waiting. I clutched the paper bag tighter and glanced at the old man beside me. The stranger who'd followed me all the way here, though I didn't understand why. The marble lobby of Commonwealth law firm was built to intimidate, and it worked. I stepped inside at 3:15, the old man from the bus still beside me, looking around with quiet interest. Crystal chandeliers hung from a vaulted ceiling. Polished marble floors reflected our images like dark mirrors. Along the walls were portraits, distinguished-looking men in robes and suits, lawyers, judges, the founders and partners who'd built this empire. I felt small, out of place, a carpenter in worn jeans standing in a temple of wealth and power. The old man, though, seemed oddly calm. He studied the portraits with the faint smile of someone recognizing old friends. At the reception desk sat a young woman, Rachel Bennett. The nameplate said perfectly styled hair, expensive suit. She looked up as we approached. Her smile faltered when she saw me, saw my jacket, my calloused hands, the paper bag. "Can I help you?" The words were polite. The tone was not. I cleared my throat. "I'm here to see Douglas Coleman. I'm his father." Her eyes widened. "His father?" "Yes, ma'am." She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up the phone. Let me call upstairs." Before she could dial, a man in an expensive suit walked past mid-30s, slick-back hair, confident stride. Austin Reynolds, one of Douglas's colleagues. He glanced at me, at the paper bag. His expression twisted into something between amusement and disgust. "Rachel," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Who's the old guy looks lost?" Rachel hesitated. "He says he's Douglas Coleman's father." Austin froze mid-step. "Douglas's father." He pulled out his phone, already dialing. Stepped a few feet away, but didn't bother lowering his voice. "Boss, yeah, your dad's here, down in the lobby, holding a paper bag." I couldn't hear Douglas's response, but I saw Austin wince. "Yes, sir, I know you said 5 o'clock. He's here now." Austin hung up, looked at me with something close to pity. "He's on his way down." Rachel returned to her computer, pretending to be busy. Austin lingered near the elevator's phone in hand. The old man stood beside me, silent, watching. 10 minutes passed, each second louder than the last. Finally, the elevator doors opened. Douglas stepped out. My son, 34 years old, tailored suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, hair perfect, shoes gleaming. He looked like he belonged here in this world of marble and crystal. He saw me and his jaw tightened. He walked over, grabbed my arm, and pulled me toward a corner away from the desk. "What are you doing here?" His voice was low, cold. "I said 5 o'clock. I was worried about traffic, son, and I made this for you." I held up the bag. "Your favorite. Meatloaf sandwich." He looked at the bag like it was diseased. "I don't want that." "Douglas, please, can we just talk?" "No." He pushed the bag away. "You were supposed to come at 5, sign the papers, leave. That was the deal." "I know, but nothing." His voice rose. "Do you have any idea where you are right now? This is Commonwealth Law Firm, the most prestigious firm in Boston. My colleagues are watching. My boss might walk through that door any second, and here you are standing in the middle of the lobby with a paper bag like some homeless—" "Douglas, you're embarrassing me," he hissed loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. The words hit like a punch. Rachel looked away. Austin smirked. A few other people in the lobby turned to stare. I stood there clutching the sandwich, feeling 62 years old and completely invisible. Except I wasn't invisible. Not to everyone. The old man from the bus was still standing near the wall, still watching, and the look on his face had changed. It was no longer kind. It was cold, calculating, like a judge who'd just heard all the evidence he needed. Do you know how many years it took me to build my reputation here? The tears came. I couldn't stop them. "Son, please. I don't care. I don't need your charity. This wasn't my Douglas. This was a stranger. You know what I need. I need you out of my life." He pulled a folder from under his arm, slapped it against my chest. "That house, it's mine. The deed says Douglas Coleman. Sign this. Take $15,000 and disappear." My hands trembled. "But I paid for it. 25 years, $647 every month. I don't care. Legally, it's mine. You have no rights. I never missed a payment. That was your choice." He was screaming now. "Nobody forced you. You did it because you're weak." The old man stepped forward. "Young man, that's no way to speak to your father." Douglas spun around. "Who the hell are you?" Austin moved closer. "Sir, this is a private firm. If you need assistance—" "I asked who you are." Douglas jabbed a finger at him. "Another beggar friend of his." The old man stayed calm, dignified. "Just someone who saw something extraordinary today." "Extraordinary?" Douglas laughed, harsh, bitter. "You want extraordinary. I've carried this burden for 34 years. He turned back to me. You gave me nothing, just second-hand clothes and embarrassment. You know what it was like being the poor kid dad showing up smelling like sawdust lunch in aluminum foil? Douglas, I worked twice as hard as everyone else to get here to prove I wasn't a charity case. And now you show up here. Years of resentment pouring out. That house is worth $420,000. Want to stay pay me $3,000 a month rent? Or take $15,000 and get out? $3,000, I whispered. I don't have... Then sign. The old man stepped between us. That's enough. Douglas's face went purple. You need to leave. I'm not going anywhere. Security, Douglas screamed. Get these bums out now. Austin pulled out his phone. Do it, Douglas roared. Mr. Coleman, Austin started. I said now. The rage in his voice, the contempt in his eyes. This was my son, the boy I raised, the man I sacrificed everything for. And he was calling me a bum. The old man stood perfectly still, watching Douglas. That calm expression never changed, but something shifted in his eyes. Something cold, final. Like a judge who'd just heard a defendant confess. Douglas was still shouting, I want them gone, both of them. Call the police if you have to. Rachel stared at her desk. Austin stood frozen with his phone. The entire lobby was silent except for Douglas's voice echoing off marble and glass. My son, my boy, screaming for security to throw out his own father. And then the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. A man in his early 50s stepped out. Gray suit, silver hair, leather briefcase, the kind of presence that commands attention just by existing. Patrick Westfield, the managing partner. He'd been heading home. Long day finished. But he stopped when he saw the crowd in the lobby. Saw his star associate Douglas Coleman screaming at an old man in shabby clothes. His eyes swept the scene. Me, the paper bag. Douglas red-faced and furious. Austin with his phone. Rachel pretending not to exist. And the old man. Patrick Westfield looked at the old man in the threadbare coat, and his face went white. Patrick Westfield stood frozen near the elevators. His eyes moved from Douglas, red-faced still, shouting to the crowd in the lobby. Then to me with my paper bag, and finally to the old man beside me. The old man in the threadbare coat, the shabby shoes, the man Douglas had just called a beggar. Patrick's briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the marble floor with a crack. Judge, his voice came out as a whisper. Judge Fairchild. The lobby fell silent. Patrick walked forward slowly. When he reached the old man, he bowed, actually bowed from the waist. Your Honor, I didn't know you were visiting today. The old man, Judge Fairchild, smiled slightly. Hello, Patrick. Austin Reynolds looked at the old man's face. Really looked. His face went gray. Oh, my God. His briefcase tumbled from his hands. Douglas stood frozen. What's going on? Patrick turned to him. His voice shook. Douglas, do you have any idea who you just tried to throw out? No. Patrick pointed at the wall. At the portraits. At the largest one, an older man in judicial robes. That's Judge Randolph Fairchild, the founder of this firm. Douglas looked at the portrait, looked at the old man. The color drained from his face. No, he whispered, that's not... Good afternoon, Patrick, Judge Fairchild said calmly. Patrick couldn't speak, just stared. You weren't supposed to know I was here. The judge's voice was quiet, but carried through the silent lobby. Today I took the bus. I wanted to see how ordinary people live, how they treat each other when no one important is watching. He glanced at me. This man, he gestured toward me, gave up his seat for me when not a single other person would. Rachel stared. So did everyone else. A small crowd had gathered. The judge continued. There was a young man in the priority seating. I asked politely. He refused. The bus hit a pothole. I nearly fell. He paused. This man caught me. Then he stood up and told that young man he'd record him and post it online if he didn't move. Patrick's eyes widened. When the young man finally gave up the seat, this man didn't take it for himself. He gave it to me, a stranger in old clothes. The lobby was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Judge Fairchild looked straight at Douglas. He stood for 30 minutes holding that paper bag just so an old stranger could sit comfortably. Judge Fairchild's voice filled the silent lobby. He didn't know who I was, didn't care about my clothes or my status. He gestured toward me. He just saw an old man who needed help, and he helped. The judge's eyes moved across the crowd, landed on Douglas. And then I came here to my own firm and watched his own son treat him like garbage. Douglas's face was white as paper. The judge pointed at the portrait on the wall. That painting was done 40 years ago, when I founded this firm. He turned back to the crowd. I built Commonwealth on one principle: integrity is everything. His gaze locked on Douglas. What happened to you, young man? Douglas's mouth opened, closed. Finally, Judge Fairchild, I didn't know it was you. I sincerely apologize. You're not sorry you insulted me. The judge's voice cut like a blade. You're sorry you got caught. The words hung in the air. If I'd been wearing a suit, would you have treated your father differently? Douglas said nothing, couldn't answer. That's what I thought. Patrick stepped forward, his face dark. Douglas, my office. Now. Douglas flinched like he'd been slapped. I'm coming with you, Patrick, Judge Fairchild said calmly. I want to hear about these papers Mr. Coleman is supposed to sign. Austin Reynolds moved forward, head bowed. Your Honor, I apologize for my rudeness earlier. Save it. The judge didn't even look at him. You're just as guilty as he is. Austin went pale. I stood there, still holding my paper bag, trying to understand what was happening. The old man from the bus, the one I'd helped, was Judge Randolph Fairchild, the founder, the legend whose portrait hung on the wall, and he was about to walk into a meeting about my house, about the papers Douglas wanted me to sign. Patrick pressed the elevator button. The doors opened immediately. Douglas stepped inside, legs shaking. He looked like he might throw up, or pass out, or both. Patrick followed, then Judge Fairchild. The judge turned back to me. Mr. Coleman, you're coming too. Me. Yes, this concerns you, doesn't it? I glanced down at my worn jacket, my calloused hands, the paper bag with the sandwich Douglas had refused. Yes, sir. I stepped into the elevator. Rachel was still frozen at her desk. Austin stood motionless in the middle of the lobby. The crowd of employees and clients stared at us like we were actors in a play. The elevator doors began to close. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Austin pull out his phone, probably to warn everyone upstairs. Too late. The doors shut with a quiet hiss. Douglas stood in the corner, arms wrapped around himself, staring at the floor. Patrick's jaw was tight. Judge Fairchild stood, perfectly calm, hands folded in front of him. The numbers climbed. 10, 15, 20, and finally it hit me. The shabby old man on the bus, the one nobody wanted to help, the one Douglas had just called a beggar, was the most powerful person in this building. And he'd seen everything. The elevator chimed softly. Floor 28. Minutes later, inside Patrick Westfield's corner office on the 28th floor, the atmosphere felt 20 degrees colder than the chaos in the lobby below. Judge Fairchild sat in one of the leather chairs, calm as still water. Patrick stood beside his desk, respectful. Douglas sat in the corner, trembling. I stood near the door, still holding my paper bag, trying to understand how my life had turned upside down in less than an hour. Judge Fairchild, Patrick began, on behalf of this firm, I sincerely apologize. The judge held up a hand. Tell me about these papers, Patrick. Patrick took the folder from Douglas's shaking hands, opened it, read. His face went from pale to gray. Property transfer and waiver agreement. He looked up at Douglas. You wanted your father to sign away his rights to the house. Douglas said nothing, just stared at the floor. Let me clarify the facts, Patrick, Judge Fairchild said quietly. He turned to me. Mr. Coleman, you purchased the house at 47 Dorchester Avenue in the year 2000. Is that correct? Yes, sir. What was the purchase price? $180,000. And the down payment? $36,000, 20%. Judge Fairchild nodded. How did you raise that money? My throat tightened. I sold my truck, borrowed from coworkers, worked 3 jobs for 6 months. And the monthly mortgage payment? $647 for 25 years. Did you ever miss a payment? No, sir, not once. Judge Fairchild looked at Patrick. All of it paid by Jack Coleman, but the deed was put in Douglas Coleman's name. Patrick's jaw tightened. And today, the judge continued, Douglas wanted his father to accept $15,000 less than half the original down payment and disappear. The silence was deafening. Patrick looked at Douglas like he was looking at a stranger. Douglas! His voice was ice. In all my years practicing law, I have never seen anything more disgraceful than this. Douglas finally looked up. Mr. Westfield, please, I can explain. You're fired. The words hit like a gavel. Effective immediately. Clean out your desk by tomorrow morning. But, sir, get out. Douglas stood, legs barely supporting him. He looked at me, opened his mouth, closed it. What could he say? He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Dad, Go, Douglas, my voice cracked. Just go. He left. The door closed softly behind him. Judge Fairchild turned to Patrick. I want the Massachusetts Bar Association to hear about this. Already on my list, Your Honor. Good. Then the judge looked at me. Mr. Coleman, I'm arranging for one of our best real estate attorneys to represent you. I I can't afford pro bono, free of charge. You won't pay a single cent. I felt tears coming again. I don't know what to say. You already thanked me, Mr. Coleman, on that bus, when you gave up your seat. He stood, walked over, and put a hand on my shoulder. That's the kind of person this world needs more of. Patrick stepped forward. Mr. Coleman, the firm will cover all legal fees. It's the least we can do. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Judge Fairchild smiled. Mr. Coleman, would you join an old man for dinner? My treat. I'd be honored, sir. Good. I know a place nearby. Nothing fancy, but the food is honest. He picked up his coat, the threadbare one that had fooled everyone, and headed for the door. I followed. Patrick walked us to the elevator. Your Honor, thank you for everything today. Judge Fairchild nodded. Make sure that young man never practices law in this state again. I will, sir. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. As we descended, Judge Fairchild looked at me. You made meatloaf sandwich, didn't you? I looked down at the paper bag still in my hand. Yes, sir. Douglas's favorite. When he was little. May I? I handed it to him. He unwrapped it, took a bite. Delicious. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened to a sea of staring faces. Everyone had heard by now. Douglas Coleman rising, star the firm's golden boy fired. We walked through the crowd. No one said a word. Outside, the January air hit us like a wall. 4:20 in the afternoon. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of cold orange and gray. Judge Fairchild finished the sandwich as we walked. You know, Mr. Coleman, I've been a judge for 43 years. I've seen thousands of cases, heard thousands of testimonies. He crumpled the paper bag and tossed it in a trash can. But I've rarely seen real character. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that helps a stranger on a bus just because it's the right thing to do. We walked in silence for a moment. The city moved around us, cars, people lives continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. As we walked down the cold Boston streets, I realized something. Sometimes one simple act of kindness can change everything. 3 weeks later, Jack Coleman stood in front of his house, truly his house for the first time in 25 years. In his hands was a new deed, fresh from the courthouse, stamped, legal, final. The name read Jack Coleman, sole owner. The lawyers from Commonwealth Law Firm had handled everything, pro bono, free of charge, every form, every filing, every phone call. It was over. Douglas had been suspended by the Massachusetts Bar Association for 6 months. He was also under investigation for fraudulent misrepresentation involving a family member. His career wasn't over, but it would never be the same. A week ago, a letter arrived, handwritten, 5 pages long. Dear Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read this. It went on, line after line, apology after apology. Some parts were angry at himself. Some parts were broken. Some parts sounded like the boy I used to know. I cried reading it, but I haven't answered yet. The letter sits in my kitchen drawer now. I open it sometimes, read it again. Wonder if forgiveness is possible. I still love him. He's my son, but I need time. Maybe someday. Judge Fairchild and I have dinner every Friday now. Nothing fancy. A diner near Dorchester. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, coffee that tastes like it was brewed yesterday. We talk about life, about law, about the world. Last Friday, he told me something I'll never forget. You know, Jack, I lost my wife 2 years ago. My kids are busy with their own lives. Grandkids I barely see. He smiled, but it was sad. You reminded me why I became a judge in the first place. To protect good people like you. You saved my life, sir. He shook his head. No, Jack. You saved mine first, on that bus. You reminded me that kindness still exists. We sat in silence for a while. 2 old men, 2 different worlds, but somehow the same. He's become my family, and I've become his. The house looks smaller than I remember. The porch sags a little. The paint is peeling, but it's mine. I'm not rich, never will be, but I have a roof over my head that no one can take away. And I have a friend who saw me, really saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. Douglas might come back someday, he might not. Either way, I'll be okay. Because I learned something these past few weeks. A father's love is priceless, but so is self-respect. Kindness is never wasted, even when it feels like no one's watching. And somewhere in Boston, a young lawyer is learning the hardest lesson of his life, that success means nothing if you lose your soul to get it. Maybe he'll find his way back. Maybe we both will. You know, looking back on everything that happened, I want to tell you something. Don't be like I was. Don't sacrifice everything for someone who might forget your name when you're no longer useful. Don't put your son's name on the deed, thinking love will protect you. Don't work 3 jobs until your hands bleed, believing gratitude is guaranteed. I learned 3 hard lessons from this journey. First, love your children, but don't lose yourself in the process. A father's love should build, not erase. I gave Douglas everything, but I forgot to teach him the value of what he was receiving. Second, kindness is never wasted, even when it feels invisible. That simple act on the bus, giving up my seat for a stranger, changed my entire life. God saw me when I thought no one was watching. He always does. Third, your worth isn't measured by what you own or who acknowledges you. It's measured by who you are when nobody's looking. God doesn't need a resume. He sees your heart. I'm sharing this as one of those grandpa stories you might tell your own kids someday, the kind that teaches you what really matters. Because grandpa stories aren't just entertainment, they're warnings wrapped in wisdom. If there's a Judge Fairchild in your life, someone who saw you when you were invisible, thank them. If there's a Douglas in your life, someone who took you for granted, set boundaries. And if you're the Douglas in someone else's story, it's not too late to make it right. God gave me a second chance on that bus. He gave Douglas a second chance through consequences. And he's giving you a chance right now to choose differently. These grandpa stories matter because they remind us we're all one choice, away from being the hero or the villain in someone else's life. So here's my question for you. Which one will you be? If this story made you think, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more grandpa stories like this one. Share it with someone who needs to remember that God sees everything. The sacrifices, the tears, the moments when you thought nobody cared. Write amen in the comments if you believe kindness always comes back. I'll see you in the next story. God bless.